Beloved chosen one, stop for a moment and listen carefully. You are not here by accident. You did not stumble into this moment by chance or algorithm. Something older than time itself has been guiding your steps, even when you thought you were lost. You have spent seasons wondering why your life seemed hidden, delayed, buried beneath circumstances that others never had to endure. While people around you rose quickly, were celebrated loudly, and seen easily, you were placed in silence, and that silence was not punishment, it was placement. You were planted, not postponed. You were hidden, not forgotten. Chosen soil is never on the surface. The deepest roots are never formed in comfort or applause. They are forged in darkness, pressure, and stillness. While others were chasing visibility, when you were being anchored, while others were trying to be seen, God was making sure you could not be moved. This is why you survived what should have broken you. This is why you carry a weight others do not understand. Heaven trusted you with depth before it trusted you with display. You have questioned yourself in those quiet nights. You asked why obedience seemed to cost you more than compromise cost others. You wondered why doing the right thing felt like it slowed your progress instead of accelerating it. You watched doors open for people who were less disciplined, less faithful, less sincere, and a whisper tried to creep in, telling you that maybe you misunderstood your calling. But that whisper was a lie. Roots grow in silence, not in spotlight. The soil you were placed in was chosen specifically for the fruit you are destined to bear. Not every ground can sustain a tree meant to feed generations. Not every environment can hold someone marked to carry weight, wisdom, and responsibility. So God allowed isolation. He allowed misunderstanding. He allowed you to feel unseen, because exposure too early would have damaged what He was forming within you. Premature visibility destroys what patience would have perfected. This is why people underestimated you. They judged by what they could see, not by what was growing beneath the surface. They mistook your quietness for weakness. They assumed your humility meant lack of authority. But heaven saw roots breaking through stone. Heaven saw resilience forming where comfort never existed. Heaven saw obedience taking shape when no one was clapping. And heaven records what humans overlook. There were moments when you almost uprooted yourself. Moments when frustration tempted you to abandon the place God planted you. You considered becoming louder, harsher, more aggressive just to be noticed. But something within you restrained that impulse. That restraint was wisdom. That restraint was protection. A tree that moves itself never bears lasting fruit. Stability precedes productivity. You are beginning to understand now that obscurity was not delay. It was development. God was shaping your character before showcasing your calling. He was making sure that when fruit appeared, it would not rot under pressure or collapse under attention. You were trained to stand before you were allowed to shine, and that is why what is coming will last. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 1, verse 3. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is spiritual law. Planted trees prosper. Rooted lives endure. Fruit comes in its appointed season, not on human timelines. Notice the phrase "in season." Fruit does not rush. Fruit does not argue. Fruit does not announce itself before it appears. It simply grows, quietly, faithfully, until the season arrives and evidence becomes undeniable. You are closer to that season than you realize. The resistance you have felt is not proof of failure. It is proof of proximity. Roots strain hardest just before breakthrough. This is why you must not compare your journey to anyone else's. Their soil is not your soil. Their assignment is not your assignment. Their fruit will not silence the same questions yours will. God hid you because what you carry would provoke envy, misunderstanding, and premature opposition if revealed too early. So he covered you until you could stand without defending yourself. Soon, you will not need explanations. Soon, you will not need to convince anyone. Fruit answers questions that words cannot. Results silence accusations that arguments never could, and when that moment comes, those who doubted your process will have nothing to say. They will only observe what patience produced. If this message confirms something deep inside you, take one moment now to support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing so this word can reach other chosen ones still questioning their season. And at the very end of this section, as a prophetic act of alignment, comment the number 77 to declare that you trust God's timing over your own 77. Chosen one, the cuts you endured were never random. They were not the result of bad luck, betrayal, or divine neglect. What looked like loss was actually precision. What felt like abandonment was alignment. You were not being punished, you were being prepared. Pruning is one of the most misunderstood acts of God, because to the human eye, removal always looks like damage. But in the realm of the spirit, removal is often mercy disguised as pain. You remember the moments clearly. Relationships that ended abruptly. Opportunities that slipped through your hands without explanation. Roles you outgrew but did not leave on your own terms. Places where you gave your best and were still cut away. Each time it felt like something was being taken from you that you needed. And yet, here you stand, still breathing, still believing, still rooted. That alone tells you the truth. What was removed was never essential to what you were becoming. Pruning does not target what is dead. It targets what is alive. Gardeners do not cut branches that are already withered. They cut healthy growth that is draining energy away from future fruit. This is the part many never understand. God will remove good things so that greater things can grow. He will allow the end of what is comfortable to protect what is eternal. And if you were cut, it is because you were producing something worth protecting. There were attachments that could not follow you into the next season. Mindsets that served survival but would sabotage purpose. People who benefited from your shade but resented your growth. If they had stayed, they would have limited your yield. So God stepped in where you would not. He did what you were too loyal, too fearful, or too compassionate to do yourself. And he took the blame for it, letting you feel the ache so you would not have to carry the consequence. You questioned yourself during those moments. You replayed conversations. You wondered what you could have done differently. But pruning is not about correction. It is about direction. It is not God saying you failed. It is God saying you are growing faster than your current structure can support. Expansion always demands reduction before multiplication. The pain was real. Do not minimize it. Loss hurts even when it is necessary. Silence hurts even when it is protective. Being misunderstood hurts even when it is temporary. But notice this, the pain did not destroy your faith. It refined it. You did not become bitter. You became discerning. You did not harden. You deepened. That is evidence that the pruning was holy. There is a reason God did not explain everything while it was happening. If he had shown you the full picture too early, you might have resisted the process. Understanding can sometimes weaken obedience. So he asked you to trust without clarity, to stay planted while being cut, to believe that his hands were steady even when they hurt. That level of trust is not common. It is reserved for those chosen to bear much fruit. You also learned something critical during the pruning. Not everything that leaves is a loss, and not everything that stays is a blessing. You learn to release without chasing, to grieve without returning, to move forward without dragging the past behind you. These lessons cannot be taught in comfort. They are learned only when something you loved is taken away and God asks you to keep walking anyway. According to what is revealed in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 2, He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Read that slowly. The branch that bears fruit is the one that gets pruned. Productivity invites process. Growth attracts cutting. Calling guarantees refinement. This is why you must stop interpreting resistance as rejection. The resistance you faced was not heaven pushing you away. It was heaven shaping you for increase. You were being trained to hold more without breaking, to receive more without losing humility, to stand taller without forgetting the soil you came from. What is coming requires strength that comfort could never have produced. You are no longer the same person who entered that season of loss. Your discernment is sharper. Your boundaries are firmer. Your obedience is quieter but stronger. You no longer need constant reassurance because you have seen God carry you through subtraction. And once you survive pruning, you are no longer afraid of loss because you know fruit will follow. The scars you carry are not signs of damage, they are markers of development. They show where God intervened. They prove that He cared enough to shape you instead of leaving you wild. Untended trees grow fast but collapse early. Pruned trees last generations. You are being built for longevity, not applause. Soon, you will look back and realize that the season you begged God to end was the season that saved your future. You will thank Him for what did not work out, for who walked away, for what closed, because you will see clearly that if it had stayed, you would have stayed smaller, and you were never meant to stay small. Chosen one. There comes a moment in every true calling when obedience grows louder than applause. This is the moment when following God no longer earns approval, but suspicion. When faithfulness stops being celebrated and starts being questioned. This is where many turn back, dilute their obedience, or compromise truth just to regain acceptance. But you were not shaped for that path. You were shaped for obedience that stands even when misunderstood. To understand this level of obedience, you must look to one of the most misunderstood figures in all of Scripture, Mary. Not the polished image often presented, but the real young woman living in a real culture with real consequences. Mary was not celebrated when she said yes to God. She was not applauded. She was marked. In her time, pregnancy outside of marriage was not a rumor. It was a sentence. Shame, rejection, and even death were possible outcomes. And yet, she obeyed. Mary did not receive a full explanation. She did not get a step-by-step plan. She did not know how Joseph would respond, how her family would react, or how the community would treat her. She only received a word from heaven and a choice. And that choice would define everything. Obedience cost her reputation before it ever revealed her purpose. People talked, whispers spread, assumptions were made. No one saw an angel, no one heard the promise. All they saw was evidence that contradicted tradition and challenged comfort. Mary carried a miracle while being treated like a mistake. She bore destiny while enduring disgrace. This is the weight of true obedience, carrying something holy while being judged as wrong. Chosen one, this mirrors your own journey more than you realize. There were seasons when God asked you to obey without visible confirmation, to walk away from what looked secure, to commit to what others could not understand. And when you did, people questioned your wisdom, your motives, even your faith. They assumed error where there was obedience. They called foolish what heaven called faithful. Mary did not defend herself. She did not gather evidence. She did not try to explain the unexplainable. She trusted that what God planted in her would speak for itself in time. This is a powerful lesson. Not every calling can be explained. Not every assignment should be defended. Some destinies require silence until fruit appears. She carried the Son of God in secret before the world ever saw him in power. And during that hidden season, she had to endure isolation, fear, and uncertainty. Yet Scripture never records her complaining. It records her trusting. Obedience anchored her when understanding was absent. That is maturity. That is faith refined beyond emotion. The obedience that grows beyond applause is dangerous to pride but precious to God. It strips you of the need for validation. It frees you from the bondage of public opinion. It teaches you to stand on God's word alone. And once you learn that, no crowd can control you and no criticism can stop you. Mary's obedience did not make sense until years later. The child she carried would be rejected, mocked, and crucified. Her yes led to a path of sorrow before glory. This reminds you that obedience does not guarantee comfort, it guarantees purpose. And purpose always outlives pain, as was spoken in the Gospel of Luke. Chapter 1, verse 38. I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May your word to me be fulfilled. This sentence carries immense weight. It is not emotional. It is not dramatic. It is resolute. It is surrender without condition. Mary did not say, I understand. She said, I submit. Chosen one. When you obeyed God in ways others did not understand, you stepped into the same lineage of faith. You said yes when it cost you relationships. You remained faithful when it delayed recognition. You chose obedience when compromise would have been easier. And like Mary, you carried something sacred that others could not yet see. There is a reason God entrusts heavy assignments to those willing to be misunderstood. Applause can corrupt obedience. Approval can weaken resolve. But misunderstanding strengthens discernment. It teaches you to hear God's voice above all others. It trains you to move when He speaks, not when people agree. You are in a season where obedience is shaping your future more than visibility ever could. Heaven is watching how you respond when no one is clapping, when obedience feels lonely, when faith feels costly. These moments are not wasted. They are recorded. They are refining you into someone who can carry fruit without dropping it when pressure comes. At this point in the message, take a moment to respond, not loudly, but sincerely. Comment the phrase, I obey God. This is not for visibility or performance. It is an internal alignment. When you write it, you are declaring that, like Mary, you choose obedience over reputation, purpose over popularity, and calling over comfort. This simple confession reinforces what you already know: your yes matters, even when misunderstood. Your obedience will outlive the opinions that questioned it, just as Mary's yes changed the course of history. Your obedience is setting events in motion that you may not fully see yet. But one day, fruit will appear, and when it does, no explanation will be necessary. Chosen one, there comes a sacred moment when your life begins to speak louder than your voice ever could. This is the season where explanations lose their power, and evidence quietly takes over. You no longer feel the urge to defend yourself, clarify misunderstandings, or correct every false narrative spoken about you. Something deeper has settled within you. You understand now that fruit does not argue. Fruit simply appears. For a long time, you tried to be understood. You wanted people to see your heart, your intentions, your sincerity. You explained yourself again and again, hoping clarity would bring peace, but clarity without fruit only invites debate. God knew this, which is why He allowed you to be misunderstood longer than you thought was fair. He was waiting for the right evidence to emerge. When fruit shows up, questions lose their authority. Fruit is visible transformation. It is consistency where there used to be chaos. It is wisdom where there was once reaction. It is peace that does not depend on circumstances. It is character that remains intact under pressure. These things cannot be faked for long. They cannot be manufactured by effort alone. They grow only through seasons of obedience, pruning, and endurance. And now, they are becoming visible. Notice how people have begun to treat you differently. They may not apologize, they may not admit they were wrong, but their tone changes, their questions soften, their resistance fades. Why? Because fruit confronts without speaking. It exposes truth without accusation. It forces recognition without demanding agreement. This is the power God gives to those who wait. You are learning a critical spiritual law. Vindication is God's responsibility, not yours. Every time you resisted the urge to retaliate, explain, or prove yourself, you preserved energy for growth. While others were busy talking, you were becoming. While others were managing perception, you were building substance. And substance always outlasts noise. This is why your silence frustrated people. They expected reaction, they anticipated defense, but you chose growth. And growth confused them, because it removed their control. When you stop explaining, you stop feeding opposition. When you let fruit speak, you step out of the courtroom of human opinion. God never intended you to live on trial. There is also humility in letting fruit speak. It acknowledges that true authority comes from consistency, not charisma, from endurance, not excitement, from obedience, not performance. You did not need to announce your progress. You let God reveal it in His timing. That restraint is rare, and heaven honors it, as Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 16. You will recognize them by their fruits. This is a statement of discernment, not judgment. It reveals how God measures authenticity, not by words spoken, but by lives lived, not by claims made, but by outcomes produced. You are now being recognized not for what you said you would do, but for what you have consistently become. This is also why certain accusations no longer land. They sound hollow now. They do not match the evidence. When someone tries to define you by an old version, it feels disconnected, almost irrelevant. That is because fruit updates identity. Growth revises narratives. The truth does not need volume when it has visibility. You are entering a phase where your presence alone carries weight. People observe before they speak. They watch before they judge. Not because you demanded respect, but because consistency commanded it. This is how God restores honor quietly, steadily, unmistakably. And yet, this is not a moment for pride. It is a moment for gratitude. You remember how long the road was, how many nights you doubted yourself, how often you felt unseen. Let that memory keep you grounded. Let it remind you that fruit is a gift as much as it is a result. God did this in you. You simply stayed planted. If this message resonates with your journey, consider gently supporting the channel by liking, sharing, or subscribing, not out of obligation, but so this word can quietly reach others who are still waiting for their fruit to speak. Sometimes one shared message becomes confirmation for someone else's endurance. You do not need to announce your arrival. Fruit announces itself. And what God is producing through you now is answering questions you no longer have to entertain. Let the fruit speak. Let the evidence stand. And keep growing. Chosen one. This is where the instruction becomes practical, grounded, and urgent for your daily walk. You are no longer in a season where survival is the goal. You are in a season where stewardship matters. And one of the most important disciplines you must now master is this. Do not explain too much, keep walking. Over-explaining is often a subtle form of fear. It reveals a desire to be understood by people God never assigned to validate you. There was a time when explanations were necessary, when you were learning, when you were still discerning, when clarity helped you process your own obedience. But that time has passed. You now carry enough fruit, enough consistency, enough evidence that explanation has become unnecessary. In fact, explaining too much can dilute your authority. It pulls you backward into conversations God already resolved through growth. Every time you feel the urge to justify your decisions, ask yourself this. Who am I trying to convince if the answer is people who are not walking with you, not investing in you, or not aligned with your calling? Then silence is wisdom. Not every question deserves an answer. Some questions are traps designed to slow you down, drain your energy, or pull you back into old versions of yourself. Here is the truth: many struggle to accept people who benefit from misunderstanding. You will never be satisfied by your explanation. They do not want clarity. They want control. Explaining feeds them. Continuing forward starves them. And God is teaching you how to conserve your strength for movement, not dialogue. You are allowed to grow without narrating every step. You are allowed to change without issuing a public statement. You are allowed to obey God without running it by everyone who has an opinion. Maturity learns when to speak and when to walk. And right now, walking is your assignment. This does not mean you become cold, arrogant, or dismissive. It means you become focused. You stop giving front row access to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop reopening doors God clearly closed just to make others comfortable. You let your direction speak instead of your defense. Notice how Jesus moved. He did not explain himself to everyone. He answered sincere seekers, but he remained silent before mockers. He did not argue with those who had already decided their conclusion. He continued toward his assignment, and that model matters now more than ever for you. As was written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 25, "Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you." This is instruction, not poetry. Straight ahead means no constant glancing sideways at opinions. Fixed gaze means no backward explanations. Forward focus protects momentum. When you explain too much, you divide your attention. Part of you is moving forward, and part of you is stuck in the past, trying to be understood by people who refuse to see you when you were growing. That split weakens progress. God wants all of you moving in one direction forward. There will be moments when silence feels uncomfortable, when not responding feels like surrender. But it is not surrender. It is sovereignty. It is choosing alignment over argument. It is trusting that fruit will continue to answer what words never could. Every step you take forward reinforces the truth more than 1,000 explanations ever would. You are also being trained for the next level of influence. Influence requires restraint. Leaders who explain everything exhaust themselves and confuse their followers. Leaders who move with clarity inspire confidence. God is preparing you to be followed, not debated. And that requires learning when silence carries more authority than speech. This instruction also protects your peace. Explaining invites opinion. Opinions invite doubt. Doubt invites distraction. Walking invites progress. Progress invites confirmation. And confirmation strengthens faith. Choose the path that multiplies peace, not the one that drains it. Now, understand this clearly. Not explaining does not mean you stop being kind. It means you stop being available for unnecessary access. You still love, you still forgive, you still wish others well, but you no longer pause your calling to manage their confusion. God did not assign you to clarify what He is already revealing through your life. As you continue walking, something important will happen. People will stop asking why and start asking how. Not how you defended yourself, but how you stayed consistent, how you kept peace, how you kept moving. That shift is evidence that fruit is doing its work. At this moment, I want you to mark this instruction with action. At the end of this section, comment the number 999. This number represents completion and release from the need to explain, and completion of the lesson that silence plus obedience produces forward momentum. By commenting 999, you are declaring, I will keep walking. Do not slow down now. Do not turn back to clarify what God is already confirming. Keep your eyes forward. Let your steps speak. Let your fruit mature. And let God handle the questions you were never meant to answer. Chosen one. There is a quiet shift that happens when fruit becomes undeniable. It is subtle, almost unannounced, yet deeply powerful. You begin to notice that the noise around you changes. Not because the world became kinder, but because your season changed. You are no longer surrounded by everyone. You are surrounded by the right ones. This is the law of recognition. Carriers recognize carriers. In earlier seasons, access to you was easy. Many people could sit near you, speak into you, influence you. Some came out of curiosity. Some came for benefit. Some came because your kindness made them comfortable. But as your fruit matured, that openness narrowed, not by force, but by alignment. People who are not carrying anything struggle to stay near someone who is. Weight exposes capacity. You may have noticed this already. Conversations feel different now. Certain relationships faded without conflict. Some people grew distant without explanation. Others became uneasy around your consistency, your peace, your discipline. This was not rejection, it was separation by resonance. When growth accelerates, misalignment becomes uncomfortable for both sides. Carriers live by different rhythms. They value depth over attention, substance over image, integrity over convenience. When two carriers meet, there is often no need for excessive words. Recognition happens in the spirit before it happens in conversation. Respect is exchanged without competition. Support flows without insecurity. These connections feel safe, not draining. This is why you must not mourn everyone who fell away. Some people were only assigned to earlier versions of you. They were never meant to carry what you carry now. And that does not make them evil. It simply makes them incompatible with your current load. Fruit changes your environment. It demands sturdier ground. There is also discernment that sharpens at this stage. You no longer bond over shared wounds, but over shared direction. You are less impressed by charisma and more attentive to character. You listen differently. You observe consistency. You sense who can celebrate your growth without trying to compete with it. This discernment is not suspicion. It is wisdom earned through process. Carriers do not rush intimacy. They watch patterns. They respect timing. They understand that alignment matters more than enthusiasm. That is why relationships in this season may form slowly but last longer. They are built on mutual responsibility, not emotional urgency. You are also learning that not everyone who admires your fruit is meant to walk with you. Some will appreciate it from a distance. Some will benefit from its shade without being part of its root system. And that is acceptable. Not every observer is a partner. God decides proximity. This season requires emotional maturity. When fewer people have access to you, loneliness can try to disguise itself as loss. But this is not loss. It is focus. It is God narrowing your circle so your energy is not scattered. Wide circles are for crowds. Small circles are for builders. Think of how Jesus moved. He ministered to many, but he entrusted himself to few. He healed crowds, but he walked closely with disciples. Even among them, there were inner circles. This was not favoritism, it was function. Different levels of assignment require different levels of access, as was recorded in the book of Proverbs in chapter 13, verse 20. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. This is not judgment, it is alignment. Wisdom multiplies in proximity. Foolishness drains through access. God is protecting you by refining who walks beside you. You may also notice that carriers challenge you without competing with you. They speak truth without trying to control. They celebrate your wins without resentment. They correct with humility, not dominance. These relationships sharpen you. They do not flatter you, and they do not disappear when growth requires discomfort. This is also where patience matters. Do not rush to replace what left. Do not force connection just to avoid solitude. Fruit-bearing seasons often include intervals of quiet companionship. God uses those spaces to deepen your dependence on Him before expanding your relational capacity again. Filling space too quickly can undo discernment. Understand this: fewer voices does not mean less support. It often means clearer direction. When noise reduces, clarity increases, and when distraction fades, purpose sharpens. God is teaching you to move with fewer confirmations so your confidence rests in Him, not in consensus. Those who are meant to walk with you will recognize you without explanation. They will see the fruit and honor the process. They will not ask you to shrink, rush, or dilute what God is doing. They will respect the weight you carry because they carry weight too. And just as important, you will recognize them, not by perfection but by posture, by humility, by consistency, by their willingness to grow rather than perform. These are the relationships that will last beyond seasons, beyond success, beyond visibility. You are not becoming isolated. You are becoming selective. And that selectivity is not pride, it is stewardship. God does not entrust harvest to environments that cannot sustain them. He surrounds carriers with carriers so the fruit does not spoil. Let this season refine your relationships without hardening your heart. Stay open, but discerning. Available, but not overexposed. Rooted, but not entangled. What God is forming now will support what He reveals next. Chosen one, this is the season where you stop waiting for permission and start resting in confirmation. You have walked through obscurity, endured pruning, obeyed without applause, allowed fruit to speak, released the need to explain, and learned discernment in companionship. Now you stand in a place many never reach: assurance without argument. You no longer need to prove that you are chosen. The evidence is established, the results are visible, and the fruit you bear has begun to silence every lingering question. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. Confidence rooted in God does not shout, it settles. It does not compete, it remains. You are no longer shaken by skepticism because you understand something now: you were never meant to convince everyone. You were meant to become undeniable. And becoming takes time. faithfulness, and endurance. You paid that price quietly. There were moments earlier in your journey when you wished God would speak louder on your behalf, when you wanted Him to correct the narrative, defend your character, or expose the truth immediately. But God chose a higher route. He let consistency do the work. He allowed time to reveal what words never could. And now, the very people who questioned your calling are running out of objections. Fruit has a unique authority. It does not attack. It does not explain. It does not retaliate. It simply exists. And its existence confronts every false assumption. This is why you feel less reactive now, less eager to respond, less affected by opinions. You have crossed a threshold where internal peace outweighs external validation. You also recognize that this is not the end, it is a responsibility. Fruit attracts attention, expectation, and sometimes pressure. God did not bring you here to impress others, but to serve purpose. The fruit you bear is not just for you. It feeds others. It provides shade, nourishment, and seeds for future growth. That is why humility must remain intact even as confidence grows. You have learned to let God finish sentences you no longer need to start. When questioned, you walk. When doubted, you remain consistent. When observed, you stay faithful. This posture is powerful. It removes you from unnecessary battles and keeps you focused on stewardship. You are guarding what God has entrusted to you. There is also a quiet joy in this season, not excitement that depends on recognition, but contentment that flows from alignment. You know who you are. You know whose you are. And you know that nothing built on obedience is wasted. This assurance is not loud, but it is unshakable. You are also seeing how God redeems time. Seasons that felt slow were actually strategic. Delays protected you, waiting strengthened you, silence matured you. Nothing was lost. Everything was layered. And now, you carry wisdom that cannot be rushed and credibility that cannot be manufactured. As the ancient words recorded in the book of Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 11 declare, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth, it will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." This promise has been unfolding in your life quietly and precisely. God spoke over you long before others saw it, and His word has been working even when circumstances suggested otherwise. This verse explains why you no longer fear outcomes. What God sends always fulfills its assignment, and if He sent you, placed you, pruned you, and sustained you, then completion is guaranteed. You are not hoping for purpose, you are walking in it. This is also where gratitude deepens. You remember the early days when support was scarce, when encouragement came mostly from God alone. Let that memory keep your heart tender. Let it shape how you treat others who are still waiting for fruit to appear. You were once there too. If this message has walked alongside your journey, if it has clarified, strengthened, or affirmed something within you, consider supporting this space by liking, sharing, or subscribing. Not as a transaction, but as a way to help this word reach others who are still doubting their season. Sometimes a shared message becomes the confirmation someone else needs to keep going. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are standing exactly where obedience has brought you. And from this place forward, you no longer need to respond to every question. Your life is the response. Your consistency is the answer. Your fruit is the evidence. Walk on with humility. Lead with integrity. Remain rooted. The questions have grown quiet for a reason. You have walked a long road in this message, and now you stand at a quiet threshold. Nothing needs to be rushed here. No conclusions need to be forced. What was meant to reach you has already settled where it belongs. The rest will unfold in its own time. You do not need to do anything immediately. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. Let the words linger. Let them breathe. Let them work beneath the surface the way truth always does, slowly, deeply, faithfully. Growth does not always announce itself, but it is always happening. If this message resonated with you, if it echoed something you have lived or are still walking through, you are free to respond in your own way. Some will sit with it quietly. Some may pass it along to someone who needs it. Some may choose to support this space by liking or sharing. There is no pressure here, only permission. What matters most is that you continue forward with clarity and peace. The fruit will keep growing. The answers will keep settling. And what is meant to be seen will reveal itself at the right time. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't, and walk on, steady and unburdened.